like to call the City of Elkhorn Standing Committee, Financial and Judicial to order, please. Roll call.
Perry Payson Jr.,
Here.
Scott McClory,
Here.
Ken Minell.
Here. Okay, we're here for discussion and possible decision regarding proposed 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. Adam?
Yeah, good evening. Since the last council meeting, or I should say the last committee meeting, we have been updating the proposed CIP to include, some of the feedback from the council at the last committee meeting. Per my memo, we made some changes based upon, once we got further into looking at the budget. I think that was the last time we had the meeting. We were still working on the budget, but we definitely have a better overview of kind of where the overall budget's going to be, not only for the general fund, but for all of our funds. And that was critical, obviously, in looking at what projects we could do to know particularly what the utilities for water, sewer, electric can support. So having now, gotten that information, we have postponed 2 projects for the water department, one being the 2026 F-250 truck, which was $80,000, and also the 2020, it was supposed to be 2025, but would be 2026 AMI meter replacement project.
Can I take it?
Yeah. Which was also $80,000. We postponed that. The water department just isn't in a situation right now to be able to do everything that we had wanted to. Certainly some of the projects would be bonded for, but in looking at what the water fund was going to have to fund next year, just the water fund wouldn't be able to support it. So those projects we're proposing to be postponed to 26. And then there are a few projects that were included in the regular budget, which we've shifted to the CIP. One of those being the pedestrian crossing flashing beacons. Matt, do you want to talk about where those would go?
Yeah, we got together with the school quite some time ago. I'd hoped that we'd be able to afford to budget for one this year, but we weren't able to do that. But we look at one at the high school, and then 2 over by the middle school off of Court Street. So it'd be at Court and First Ave, and then Court and Market.
So we've added that to the CIP. We've also added a trailer. Last year, or I should say this year, DPW purchased a sprayer that they use for pavement markings. This would be a trailer for that. That would be for $15,000. At the last meeting, the council, or I should say the council F&J committee, talked about some of the rec department projects that were requested that we didn't have funds for. I know there's concern about public safety with respect to the field fencing not being in a good condition, regardless of whether or not we'd actually be liable. I know there's a concern about the safety of potential injury from that, so we did add that to the CIP for $70,000. And then this was one that we've been working on that was a mistake on my part in terms of adding it, but potential new park that would be on Highway 12, which we're currently working with a potential donor to fund the large portion of that. So that's been added. When we've talked to the donor, they've indicated a desire or openness to spend potentially up to $250,000 a year in a contribution over a 3-year phase. So that's what the CIP would include. I know we're still have to finalize an MOU with that donor, but that has been added since you last saw the CIP. Those are the main changes in terms of projects that were added or postponed. We've certainly tweaked some of the numbers, just, we've done more, quality control, if you will, on the numbers to make sure that they're all adding up right. But other than that, I don't know if council has any questions about the revised CIP. And I just would clarify too that, as I mentioned last time, under the plan that's proposed to you, if you don't move forward with, let's say, a new fire station next year or the year after, then we'd be about 60% of our statutory debt limit, which, the council's goal has been to stay within 65 or stay under 65 to 75%. So we were definitely under the goal, the 65% number, and about where we've been trending the last few years. So we'd stay around 60% over the next 4 to 5 years, assuming that equalized values increased about 3.5% a year. So.
I just wanted to mention too, we do have Naomi here who prepared the memo that discusses the Elkhorn West subdivision and stormwater pond. So if you have any questions for her regarding that, she's here too.
So yeah, since you brought that up, is it really gonna solve the problem? Or are we just throwing money away?
Well, I wouldn't say you're throwing money away, but the plan, let me take you back a couple years ago, there's flooding on Monica Drive or Avenue. And the flooding is because there's no overland flow path. So the overland flow path, when the water increases, it goes through homes and backyards to get out. The project that was completed in 2022 has been working. I mean, we have water in the pond. We have, that water is completely diverted away from the problem area. And since then, there has been ponding in Monica, but it hasn't flooded residents. So that project was predicted to take away about 25% of the peak flow to Monica Drive. This project that's in front of you now was discussed during the conversation was between the two projects back in '22 based on funding. This project, if you were to go forward with it, would take away about another 25% of the peak flow rate. What does that mean? Is there still going to be ponding in the street? Likely, if you get a rainfall event that's over the capacity of the inlets. This project would bring the ponds within the current subdivision up to current code in allowing only the 10-year flow rate to get into the storm sewer and provide additional storage. That's going to help. Will it mean it never floods? I can't say that. I think, in my opinion, it's the pond we built in '22 has only been functioning for, about a season and a half. And we've seen good things out of it. It's not overtopped. It's been holding back water. That may be significant to keep the peak flow rates low enough to not overtop into the backyards. Without doing a full analysis of the stormwater system, I can't say for sure, but it'd be interesting to see what that project does over time.
I just would like to add something too. I mean, this, with the overland flow, that's a critical thing to really focus in on here, is that you're never, ever gonna be able to fix the problem unless you design the storm sewer system to handle a 200-year storm. I mean, because when the water plugs up the storm sewer, it uses that overland flow path, and those homes on Monica are in that overland flow path. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
So, and I don't know, I see our grant writers sitting out there. Is this something that we could possibly pursue with the state for possible funding assistance?
Potentially with DNR.
All right.
Yeah, there is, I did actually brought information on that. There is a municipal flood control grant program. In the past, and still high priority, is property acquisition, which means you would remove properties that are repetitively flooded to maybe create that overland flow path that safely passes water without damaging properties. Those projects typically take priority. However, lower on the list, and I've heard at the most recent conference that I went to, that they are setting aside money for more structural improvements that could be considered as the dredging of the ponds over in the subdivision, if we can show that it provides benefit.
Well, we have an excellent writer over there.
We do, I know.
So that would be something that we should definitely be considering to try to lessen the impact to the city on that, is take advantage of all those grants opportunities. Mary, you want to say something?
I did. My question is, we had that ponding, as you call it, on Monica on that bad storm in the spring. We've had a ton of rain this season. Has that occurred again, or was that one instance?
Our office received a phone call from a resident off of Monica where it had gotten up to about the middle of his driveway.
Was that the one instance?
That was the one instance.
Have we noticed anything since, though? We've had quite a few
No.
storms.
No, there was that one instance where it got up to about, like I said, the middle of this driveway. And and when we drove by, it was already down. I mean, as soon as it came up, it recessed right away. So it just needed, the storm sewer system needed time to be able to take on the water. So, and I agree with you, we have had a fair amount of rain this spring and into the summer.
Okay, thanks.
So thank you for allowing me to relocate to hopefully a better audiovisual experience.
Want me to
Yeah,
pass
if you
over here?
could.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick additional things that I didn't mention previously. In terms of changes from the last time you saw the CIP, one of the changes was we did add the fact that we ordered a new ambulance in late 2023, I think it was, which we were expecting delivery by this year, and it has not been delivered yet. So even though we already have the funding, available that we've been holding to pay for it, we did put that on here just so that everybody's aware of it and we don't lose track of it, so we don't forget about it. And we have a purchase order in our system, but nonetheless, just so everybody's aware of that. The chief did alert me to the fact that the council did amend that purchase price to do the different chassis. So
Yeah, I remember that.
so that will be updated so the cost will go from 302 to 353 for the price for that. And then there was also a brush truck that apparently we ordered this year that we won't get for, what, a year or two?
We ordered that last year.
Last year,
And that's another one that's not coming till next year, yes, sir. We just did pre-con on it last week or the week before.
So we'll update the CIP to reflect that too. So there are going to be at least two projects. And this is just a continuing problem for us because now that everything we're ordering is taking so long to get, same thing with particularly the police vehicles, that, you're putting it on the CIP, we're ordering it, and then it can take years for us to actually get it. So just wanted to make council aware of that. And then just one additional thing that is a segue into the budget conversation. This was in the council packet, or I should say the F&J packet, but this was kind of an overview of our proposed budget for 2025. And this is all the funds. And one of the things I want to mention in respect to the CIP portion is just, as I mentioned, the sewer, water, and electric departments, as you can see, they're running significant deficits, although with respect to the water and electric department, that's largely due to depreciation. In talking to the auditor, some cities include depreciation in their budgets, others don't. We think it's good practice to do it, but as a result, for example, the electric department shows a deficit of $155,000, but they have $570,000 in depreciation, so that means they are generating cash. Same thing with the water department. They're showing a deficit of $520,000, but they have almost $862,000 in depreciation. And part of the reason the depreciation is so high is because the different the utilities are doing a lot of projects, so that's certainly increasing the depreciation over time. But nonetheless, you can see that particularly the sewer department is the one that's struggling the most. Depreciation somewhat contributes to that, but even if you don't take depreciation into account, you can see the sewer utility is projected to have a deficit of about $120,000 next year. So with that being the case, we are going to have to look at raising rates in next year sometime. I know we've tentatively been thinking July 1 because I know the council just approved water rates, which were obviously tough for the community. So the hope is that we can squeak by till next July. The good thing is the sewer fund does have a significant amount, I say significant, but it does have cash on hand that, we have a couple $1 million in cash for the sewer department, so we could eke by until, let's say, July before rate increase goes into effect, but didn't want to make you aware of that. So pretty much this is just, I want to give you an overview kind of the budget as a whole as preliminarily, but also focusing on the CIP because of the fact that you have the utilities that are struggling. So I should say particularly the sewer utility, and just wanted you to be aware of a potential rate increase And also wanted to explain why the water department may not be able to do everything next year that we had originally hoped. And if you're ready to move on to the general budget as a whole, one additional CIP item, electric department still has not gotten an answer from ATC about whether or not they're gonna bury those city lines on the ATC transmission lines. They gave us the $200,000 cost estimate, but they still have not verified. I know BZ followed up with them a week or two ago, and he said he hasn't gotten an answer, so that's one additional project we're waiting information on.
Over on Lincoln,
Pardon me?
on Lincoln.
It would be well, if you're going out southbound, out the city, it's on the south side on Lincoln, yes. In terms of the budget as a whole, I'm just gonna real quickly shift to a different. You have the hard copies in front of you. Just wanted to highlight some real basic things. Our overall proposed budget for next year is $44 million, which is $20 million less than 2024. That's a huge difference, and the large reason for that is the fact that we have fewer projects for the utilities, or I should say cheaper projects for the utilities next year than in prior years and in this year. So there's a pretty big overall budget difference. The general fund is proposed to increase from 8.7 to about 9.2 million. Right now, we have a deficit for the general fund budget of about $250,000, which we've got net savings from this year due to extra revenues and being under budget to help soften that deficit for next year. That deficit will also decrease as we continue to get additional information on, we're still waiting for a final health insurance update to take into account the changes that you guys proposed with changing the health network for next year. So that's going to change the overall general fund budget. But so yeah, the general fund budget right now is going to have to use some reserves from this year. We are proposing, we can only raise the overall levy by $42,000, and that's because of our 0.829% net new construction. It goes without saying that $42,000 doesn't go a long way to have to use that to fund the entire, not only the general fund, but that's the money that the library relies on, and so it's definitely tough for the city. One sort of weird quirk is that because the state eliminated the personal property tax and we're getting the personal property aid in exchange, our levy next year, even increasing our levy, is going to actually be lower than it was this year because they took out the personal property component of it. So if you look at the proposed levy for next year, it's going to be actually lower than this year's. The proposed budget for next year has a 2% COLA for non-bargaining employees. Our employees would still be eligible for their merit increase under the step structure, which is 2%. So, and then one of the biggest challenges for us this year, or I should say for 25, was the reduction in interest rates. We get a really great deal on our deposits with Associated Bank and through the state LGIP. So we'll be anticipating losing about $500,000 in interest income for the city, which is obviously a huge number for us to deal with. We continue to move most of our capital expenditures out of the budget, out of the operating budget, into we intend on issuing debt for most of that. We're still budgeting $35,000 of the levy towards the capital equipment replacement fund, which is what we use for computers and some of those smaller items that we can't really borrow for. As I mentioned before, we are going to tentatively having to use some extra funds from this year to balance next year's budget. And we are going to have to reduce the general fund budget by about $160,000 because of the expenditure restraint program. That's where the state says, even if you have the funds to pay for what you want to do, they don't allow us to increase the budget, but by only the amount of inflation and then half of what your net new construction number is. So they said inflation over the last year was 3.2%. And our net new construction was about 0.83%, so you take the half of the 8.83, you add that to the 3.2% inflation, and that's where you get the 3.6 limit for us. So we are gonna have to cut about $160,000 from the general fund budget. Slight good news on that is that we do anticipate the health insurance aspect of that coming off a little bit, so that should help reduce that 160 number down, but we will have to sharpen our pencils, as several of you like to, the phrase you guys like to use.
You're gonna bring that back to us? What exactly are you gonna cut to get us to 160?
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you guys how you wanted to handle that, if you wanna have another FJ meeting, or if you wanna,
Yeah,
okay,
let's come back with some proposals,
okay.
please. Do you agree with that, Ken?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
And just some quick highlights of some of our revenues, expenses for the general fund. In terms of increases for next year, we are getting a healthy general transportation aid increase of $72,000, connecting street aid of $24,000. The rec department is anticipating bringing in more recreation fees because of particularly their before and after school program. And then we're getting a little increase in state shared revenue and supplemental aid. And then the police liaison fees, we're anticipating an increase. As I mentioned before, in terms of reduced revenues for general fund, interest income, we're going to lose some income from there, although the general fund doesn't get as much income from the interest as much as the other utilities and stuff, which have a lot more cash deposits. You'll see the real estate taxes are projected to go down by $70,000 because of the fact that the personal property aid component of that got taken out. Fire EMS, we are expecting reduced contributions for that because our percentage continues to go up relative to the townships in terms of our, population and use of those services. So we're going to be paying a larger share of that. Plus, we are anticipating a lower budget for the fire department next year, so that's also going to mean that they're contributing less to the city. And then in terms of expenses, just wanted to highlight a couple things. One of the biggest expense increases we have next year is in the street department, and I'm sure this is going to come as a surprise to Matt, but the street department is not getting a big budget increase, but it's rather in looking at the breakdown between what was being billed in wages to the general fund, DPW, versus the sewer fund, which DPW employees work, do both kinds of work, we realized that the sewer fund was being overbilled for wages. So once you look at what the DPW was actually doing for streets versus sewer, it made sense to shift more of the wage costs to the street department. So as a result, they're going to be taking on more wages for next year. And as I mentioned earlier, the sewer fund is going to need a sewer rate increase anyway, so shifting some of those wages is going to be beneficial. Fire suppression, there's been a change, as you guys remember, from when you guys changed the fact that the fire department those employees shouldn't be necessarily salaried because of the schedule they were working. And so this is just reflecting the fact that rather than them getting paid their hourly wage, or I should say rather than getting their salaries, they're going to be getting more of a wage. Their compensation is going to be more wage based, and then they'll have more overtime as well. So there was a reduction on the salary side and an increase on the wage and OT side. You'll see there's a $44,000 increase in other contractual services for the PD. That's because of the budget that we're allocating for potentially for contracting with the sheriff's office for next year. So that's what the big increase is there. You'll see that we're estimating about a $44,000 increase in wages for the patrol officers. And then the PD's software maintenance services have also gone up by about $41,000 for next year. You'll see there's a pretty sizable increase in the fire department vehicle maintenance. And then legal services, that's another area where we're anticipating a sizable increase based upon what we've been using so far this year. And then the PD's requested some, a sundry of office and equipment items, which this is probably gonna be one area that we will be targeting for cuts versus of the 160 number earlier.
Can you go back to number 8 for a second?
Yep.
Help me understand how we lost money in investments, 8,764 this year, considering it was the highest, the Dow Jones and the highest the NASDAQ has ever been in the history of the United States. How did we lose money in our investments?
We did, this is for next year. This is for next year's
projected
budget.
loss?
Yeah, no, this is the projected change from this year to next year, showing the changes in our revenues from this year to next year. And because of interest rates are going down,
Okay.
so we're
Has
losing.
nothing to do with, if when it says investments, I'm like, how can we lose money in investments? Okay.
No, it's, that's just the way it's coded, but,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yep. So in terms of decreases in expenses next year, this is another one that looks sort of, will catch your eye, but for years, the police department's health insurance costs were being billed to general admin, which was odd because in our budget, I mean, the PD has their own separate budget in the general fund. So while the health expenses were going to general admin, we weren't quite sure. I don't know if it was just because that was the easiest thing to do or what, but to better reflect the true breakdown in expenses, those health costs are being shifted from general admin to the PD. So you'll see a big decrease in our expenses, but, and then, as I mentioned before, the fire department, we're expecting reduced wages for them, and that also, from the salaries, because I talked about the fact that their compensation is shifting less, going from salaries more to overtime and hourly pay. So you'll see that reduction here on the salary side. As the council's aware, now that we have a part-time court clerk, we're estimating savings of about $50,000 for that position. So although we are paying a part-time person, so there is an offset, but not, I mean, we are definitely saving money. And then you'll see that the HRA savings from the council, reducing the HRA contribution, you see that reflected here. And then lastly, we will have some savings next year because we don't have multiple elections like we do this year. So fortunately, not a lot of savings for next year or reductions in expenses, but those are some of the bigger ones. And lastly, just the big picture item here, based upon the budget as it currently is, the mill rate, we anticipate going down by about 40 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. And that's due to two things. A, our equalized value, again, went up by almost $100 million. And, or I should say our assessed value went up by almost $100 million. And then two, because of that personal property aid kicking in, our levy has gone down. So between those two things, we are anticipating a reduction in the mill rate for next year. These numbers will get finalized once we get the manufacturing data from the state, because they're the ones that give us the manufacturing value, assessed value. And I do just want to, I'm sorry that we don't have the proposed budget reductions ready for you tonight. So we've been just scrambling to get the rest of the budget put together here. So we should have that soon.
Ken or Scott, anything?
My only question, are we still projecting to sign off on the budget prior to Thanksgiving like always? Is that still the benchmark we're shooting for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to have the public hearing in November, probably that first. Well, I know you guys were talking about doing one meeting in November, but if we have one meeting in November, that public hearing will be at that meeting.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
So, I would like to, you know, see if Katie James could participate in any of these other capital things, see what types of funding we can get assistance on to try to lower that. So I don't know what kind of coordination you guys have had, but definitely anything that, it's our money being spent somewhere else, why not bring it back home?
Right, 100%. Worst thing that can happen is they say no.
Right.
And they don't say no to Katie very often.
No.
I don't let them.
Yeah, Katie and I definitely stay in good communication. She's seen the CIP, although, I mean, I can't tell you how up to date she is on the proposed revisions we just had made, but I know we've talked a lot in the past, and I know she's working on a lot of the bigger projects, from the band shell renovation to, I know she's doing some other ones, but, so yeah, I'm sure Katie will continue to do the best she can.
She loves this stuff, so. Mary, you had something to add? No? Okay. Okay, so at this point, there's no decision to be made, it's just continue to put things together for us to review again? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, unless you guys have any preliminary, you know, feedback regarding either the CIP or the proposed budget, but, you know, if there's any projects you want removed, added.
Did we get any updates on the camera situation, chief?
I mean, I know that the chief has got revised quotes on the cameras. Are you talking about for the license plate readers, or? Yeah, I mean, the chief did get a updated cost estimate for those cameras. Again, the cost estimate's $60,000-ish, right, chief?
I believe for all of them, yes. We went through and prioritized, and that was all provided.
So as of now, they're not in the budget because, one, we have to reduce the budget by $160,000 in order to qualify for the ERP, and we're running a deficit of $250,000. So, and I know I mentioned this before, but I mean, we could only raise the levy next year by a total of $42,000, and just, you know, just the patrol officer wages themselves are about, could be $42,000 next year for an increase, so.
So Katie, open the book. Why don't you just come on up?
Yeah.
So,
So as far as grants, the cameras, I've talked to the chief, there's a grant for that.
For the cameras.
I can fully fund the cameras. However, what I can't fund is the maintenance.
mhm.
So the annual fee of the storage of those images are so large, and the statute requires a certain month. If you think on Lincoln Street, for example, that's 11,000 cars pass on that every day. That's 11,000 images times 45 days, which is what's required to maintain of high-res images. It's the storage that's brutal. So yes, I can get cameras, but they're going to be just beautiful posts if we can't pay for the maintenance of the computers.
And the feds don't have anything to offer for the maintenance stuff.
No. Green Bay has a similar, they won similar funding, and they're paying $176,000 in computer storage. So we're on a much smaller scale, I realize, but what Chief and I had talked is it's probably gonna cost us $50,000 a year to maintain the cameras. So I can buy you cameras, I can get you cameras, but I can't maintain them.
A few sessions back, we worked with Casey and Gallagher, I believe was the broker, and we talked about a savings of up to $300,000. When will we be receiving those anticipated savings? What budget cycle will we see those savings?
Yeah, we're anticipating seeing those January 1 of next year.
2025?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's unfortunate, I mean, it's unfortunate because of the fact that, you know, for this year's budget, we, for 2024, we were counting using some of the reserves from the health fund a little bit because to offset the increases. So, yeah, we'll save $300,000, but if we weren't using the reserves from this year in 24, we would have had to budget even more. So even though we're saving up to $300,000 and we use $200,000 in reserves, you're talking about $100,000 delta. So, you know, we may only truly see $150,000 savings next year for the health costs.
Okay.
Now, I will say just one quick thing on that, you know, we are working with Gallagher and did meet with them a week or two ago. They're trying to help us better, you know, forecast long-term what the health costs are gonna be to eliminate the, you know, year-to-year fluctuation. So they're working with their underwriter and they're gonna send us that information, so that hopefully will be helpful, but I doubt that's gonna make a real dramatic increase, based upon the preliminary numbers they've given us.
Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned, thank you.